So, Bhagavatam Canto 7, Chapter 6, Text 9. Gogriheshu Puman Sattam Atmanam Ajitendriya Sneha Pashir Dhir Bhaddam Utsaveta Vimochitu. What time?
Do the whole thing and then I'll speak.
Look at the screen. That's the yeah. 7.6.9. 7.6. Yeah. Would you like to repeat it?
Gogriheshu Puman Sattam
Gogriheshu Puman Sattam
Atmanam
Ajitendriya Sneha Pashir Dhir Bhaddam Utsaveta Vimochitu. Cool.
Gogriheshu Puman Sattam
Gogriheshu Puman Sattam
Atmanam Ajitendriya
Atmanam Ajitendriya
Sneha Pashir Bhaddam
Sneha Pashir Dhir Bhaddam
Utsareta Vimochitu.
Utsareta Vimochitu.
Word to word translation, or do you want to start with first?
Sorry?
Word to word translation, or should we go to the word?
Sorry, I didn't hear.
Just asking that should we read word to word translation, or should we go to purpose?
I'll read now. Translation. What person too attached to household life due to being unable to control his senses can liberate himself? An attached householder is bound very strongly by ropes of affection for his family, wife, children, and other relatives. Purport. Prahalad Maharaj's first proposal was Kumara Ashikrit Prajano Dharman Bhagavatam Aiha. One who is sufficiently intelligent should use his human form of body from the very beginning of life. In other words, from the tender age of childhood to practice activities of devotional service, giving up all other engagements. Dharman Bhagavatam means the religious principle of reviving our relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For this purpose, Krishna personally advises Sarvadhamam Parityajya Mamikam Saram Raja. Give up all other duties and surrender unto me. While in the material world, we manufacture so many duties in the name of so many isms, but our actual duty is to free ourselves from the cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease. For this purpose, one must first be liberated from the material bondage, and especially from household life. Household life is actually a kind of license for a materially attached person by which to enjoy sense gratification under regulative principles. Otherwise, there is no need of entering household life. So Prahalad Maharaj was schooled before he was even out of the womb. And so we're all like small creepers, plants in devotional life. And so, like any plant from the very beginning, it's small and tender, and it has to be nurtured. And we have to nurture each other. because Narada Muni is involved, one time in Vrindavan, there was a village of thieves right near the Krishna Balaram temple. So someone asked Prabhupada, can we get a gun? And just like when I asked Prabhupada, can we wear, in Montreal, can we wear Lord Nrsimha masks on Harinam? He said, yes. And this time he said, yes. And he said, Narada Muni had a disciple who was a snake, a serpent. And now, just like it's saying, he decided, just like you've all decided, to make this wonderful choice of a positive alternative of the nations of material life, which we're discussing now. And so the snake, the serpent, became a disciple, and now all the people that were frightened of him all these years called him names. Because now he's meek, and he's a devotee, and he's got Vaishnava qualities, seeing the good in everybody, being nonviolent, except time, place, and circumstances are caveat to act in devotional service according to what's going on. So sometimes if someone's attacked, a brahmana, a child, sometimes you have to defend yourself. But the snake was so happy in his devotional life that he was just happy to gain this purification in his life. So the children and other people not only called him names, but even threw rocks on him. So he went to his spiritual master, Narada Muni, that the children are throwing rocks and calling me names. What should I do? Oh, by the way, how do you think the serpent put on his tilak? One person said with his tongue. That was a good guess. Then he'd have it already like that. But the other devotees helped him. And you'll be hearing me talk about this over the days, how we have to help one another and not be judgmental, or my service is better than your service, or all the possible pitfalls of dysfunction that as humans we may go through. So Prabhupada said Narada Muni told the serpent that, yes, you're a devotee, but you're also a cobra. So that's another aspect, that Krishna gives us talents. So we want to use the talents that Krishna gives us, and then it's full-hearted bhakti. There's no work and play. It's not looking at a clock waiting for the office to close. It's full-hearted bhakti because this is the talent that Krishna gave us. So Prabhupada said the cobra, Narada Muni said, you're a devotee, but you're also a cobra. And then Prabhupada said, so raise your hoods. And then Prabhupada imitated a cobra with his eyes wide. he was so good at imitating, and you never knew what was going to come out of his mouth. It was so much fun to be with him. We were sitting together, and I'm right by his side. He took me every place, to Lalit Prasad, the signing of the Juhu, to Vice President of India. He took me. So I told this in the car last night. I'm here, and people are lavishing respect on him and giving him gifts and touching his feet. And I said, isn't it true that if someone touches your feet, you have to take on their karma? Have you heard that? And one time, a village, I couldn't stop them, touched my feet, and I felt a little ill that night. So isn't it true that you have to take on people's karma? And then Prabhupada laughed. He said, that's why I pat him on the head. I give it back to them. So that's our Srila Prabhupada. And we can hang this in the temple while I'm here, if you want.
He's gonna stay there for the next.
Can you just read it?
You could put it here. So Krishna created this varnashram system, and practically though, if there wasn't grihastha life, our movement would stop because there'd be no new babies. Here's another nice picture of Prabhupada.
Srila Prabhupada ki.
And look at him with a plant. While there was the pandemic, this book came.
It's your book. Wow.
Yeah. I was the first photographer. So Swamiji at the time asked me to do a portrait for the Bhagavad Gita, Macmillan. This is the portrait. And this is, we were representing the Beatles for the Hare Krishna mantra, which was the fastest selling single of Apple Records. And so some of you probably, because you've been in the ashram, don't know, this is someone named David Bowie. But it's probably permeated our walls anyway when we go out in the street. He was a very famous singer. And then there's someone named Lulu and Dave Clark. And here's Sam Mashinda looking at the camera. He's looking at the camera. And here's Gurudas looking at Vaikuntha. I don't know what everybody's posing, and I'm looking like that. But Prabhupada always looked like that. In fact, someone asked me in the car, when's the first time you saw Prabhupada? And I'm going to go back to the text, but really what people want while I'm here is Prabhupada Katha. So I'll honor the text, but I'll also Because there's three segments. There's the Swamiji segment, there's the Prabhupada, and there's Jagat Guru General. And it's basically San Francisco, London, and India. So I was with Jamuna before we were devotees. It wasn't an arranged marriage. And see, that's the aspect of this text, is that, yes, if we didn't have grihastra and procreation, the movement would stop, literally. There's children. And the act is so pleasurable, it says in the Srimad Bhagavatam, that you forget what family life is like. You've already had one or two kids, and it's really difficult, and you're working 9 to 5, and still, again. And so that's the intricacy, that how do we carry on our life as humans with anarthas and past habits and karma? How do we carry this on and be devotees in this world? And it's even harder for grihastas because they have to go into the world maybe more than brahmacharis. Of course, our sannyasis go into the world of lovely leader here. He's so enthusiastic. Prabhupada said enthusiasm is the backbone of Krishna consciousness. And he's one of the kind ones. He encourages others. It's the tendency when you get titles and wealth and comfort. That's what happened in the evolution of our movement in many ways. It wasn't the early days of building and family and enthusiasm and hope and purpose. And it happens to all movements. In the civil rights movement, the same thing happened. So, in the 60s, in San Francisco, it was great pleasure. However, there was people like myself who really were searching for something better. A lot of the young people, they were not happy with the adults, how they were ruining the world, still ruining the world. And so the young people migrated all over to these oases. This is an oasis right here, this temple. We go out, we come back, but it's like a safe bubble. Beautiful bubble. What a nice temple. So big I couldn't even remember how to get to the temple room. So Jamuna went and met Prabhupada because she had to go to Janaki's wedding, her sister. And she was already a really good cook. She was a really good cook. And she goes there and the Swami's teaching her how to cook. And she touched herself. And he said, we don't touch ourselves when we cook for Krishna. She said, what? Okay, he said, go wash your hands. An hour later, she said, Swamiji, can I go smoke a cigarette? He said, the great Jamuna, but see, he was making barbarians into Brahmins. He said, go wash your hands. Then 99.99.99% of the people, when they cook, they taste. So she took the ladle and she tasted. And Swamiji said, we don't taste when we cook. She thought, oh, and of course he said, go wash your hands. She thought it was the first mantra. But then she cooked and she got to know him, and she came back raving about the Swami. Later on, there was this devotee, Harsharani, in San Francisco. Harsharani. Her name sounds harsh. Yamuna, I had a hidden grove in Golden Gate Park. I was reading the Bhagavad Gita, penguining, and she comes in and she says, she proposed marriage to me in the most unromantic proposal of all times. She said, Harsharani says, if you live together, you have to get married. Oh. Right. Just to show you, I'm getting to how I met Swami, I'm answering that question, but after I actually, when he called me in and I got to know him, I found an excuse every day. I loved to be with him. He welcomed me like he hadn't seen me for 20 years. He was so... The reason we loved him is he was so giving. He was peeling apples. He was giving us Vedic wisdom. He was giving us kindness. We never met anybody so kind and giving. My father is a nice man, but the Swami was so giving, and he was amongst us. And so now, when I was with him, they would say, don't let Guridas in anymore. He's always with the Swami. And then when I decided to go, Krishna put them in the kitchen, and oh, there's Guridas again. But the Swami never said, go away. So there were some pakoras in the kitchen, and the aroma was so powerful that it reached Swamiji and me. So he gets up and he goes in the kitchen, and he had a way of eating without touching his lips. On the way to Montreal, the girls went ahead, and Samarshanda Mukunda and I had a whole jar of gulab jamans. And we tried to imitate the Swami, how he ate it. It was bounced off us. But he would go like a perfect lotus hands, no hurry, 100% there. What an amazing being, 100%. Seeing into our hearts on the mountain, we're climbing up, and he knows, but he's spoon feeding us as each and every one of us could get going, like the gopis and Krishna, satisfying each, from Vietnam vets to hippies. So the pakora is there, and Harsharani, the rule enforcer's there in the kitchen. It's in every office, there's a jerk, every office is a fool, every sports team, every family. So Swamiji takes a pakora and puts it in his mouth, and she said, you can't do that. When we cook for Krishna, we don't taste. His answer was he took another one and threw it in his mouth. And she said, no, we don't do that. He said, who has given you these rules? And she said, you have. He said, then I can break them. And you see, sometimes he became really like a little kid. Like a little kid. We were in Calcutta, and he's sitting on the floor, and he says, Guridas, I fooled them. And his eyes were twinkling like a little kid. I said, who have you fooled? He said, the mosquitoes. And he was like, it was like the great tome of Srimad Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita. I have fooled them. So like a little kid I was with him, I said, are there mosquitoes in Krishna Loka? And he said, yes, but they don't bite, they sing. They don't bite, they sing. So now, this was the 60s, and we believed in Krishna consciousness, so we were all in different costumes. There was the shikis and people with feathers in their hair, and Jamuna made me a samurai outfit kind of thing, and Mukunda had a paisley one-piece something, and Samrashunda was in an Afghani shepherd's robe that smelled like sheep, and we're all going out to the airport. There are about 50 of us, and the cars were painted. We painted our cars. So we had 3 cars with Hare Krishna. And Haridas, the artist, who brought a totem pole into the temple, and Swami just left the totem pole there, and the picture of Lord Jesus. He was so open-minded. And he knew eventually it'll change when he gives us these principles and this way of life, but we didn't know anything. No prayers, no mridangas, no kartals, no movement, no books. But we had the Swami, just like Krishna. Would you want Krishna or the armies? I'll take Krishna. We'll take Swamiji. And so Haridas borrowed his father's Cadillac. And Cadillac is like a Rolls Royce or high-class car. And we painted Hare Krishna mantra on the side, and Haridas's father was not amused. So we go out to the airport, and there's no Swami. Everybody's off the plane. Well, anybody who travels a lot, people get up and they stand like cattle in the aisle waiting for the doors to open. But, you know, someone who travels, you just let them go and then you go. And so then suddenly the Swamiji came out and he was golden and responding, and again looking up to, he's looking up into Vaikuntha or someplace. And it looked like his feet didn't touch the ground because it's like Yudhisthira's chariot. Because Yudhisthira didn't tell a lie. So Krishna, of course, is very mischievous too. So because Yudhisthira didn't tell a lie, you know the story of Ashwatthama the elephant? I'm going to skip ahead a bit. It's free consciousness. So now we're in England, and the neighbor, Mr. French, was claiming that the kirtan was going through the walls into his apartment early in the morning, and his wife would faint every time she heard the kirtan, and his little dog would yip, 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 yip. Now, we had a friend of Allen Ginsberg who was our member of parliament. He lived in the House of Commons, but he would get drunk, and we would see him in Piccadilly Circus and have to take him home in the Krishna van. He was a real character. It turned out he was a double agent spy. KG. No, Tom Dreberg, the member of parliament. Allen Ginsberg gave us his name. They were friends. He was somewhat of a poet as well. Stranger than fiction, a double agent. But he wrote a letter on House of Commons paper stationery that this is soundproofed. But it wasn't. It was right. The kirtan was going through the wall, and his wife was fainting, and the dog was going yip, yip. So because Krishna did this with Yudhishthira, and Ashwatthama, is dead, we decided, and this was really, talk about chasing rhinos. So, first of all, Samuel shouldn't have brought a whole shipload of redwood before we even had a temple. So that's a visionary. We were ready. We're going to meet the Beatles. We were ready, you know. We want to do this for the Swamiji. We were, as they say, fired up. So now all the officials came to whether we could be zoned for a temple. It was in a residential area. And he was complaining. And so now we had a temple room, and there was a big redwood door with a window about this big. So when the door was open, we were singing a rousing kirtan. When the door closed, door was open, door closed. Door open, Haribol, door closed. Mr. Friend said, now, that's a bloody trick. It was a bloody trick. He tried to get out, the doorknob comes out of his hands. He's like a raccoon caught in the lights. He claws the door open, and 36 sleeping bags fall out. It was zoned for 2 caretakers, but actually because George Harrison was our guarantor, they okayed it. So now Swamiji comes into San Francisco airport, and there's about 50 of us in costumes. And he takes out card towels, and very slowly and expertly he wrapped them. And he started singing in his honey, gravelly voice. And we sat at his feet and sang with him. And then the officials were coming over, because people always come around, and they come around to see what's going on. And just as they were coming over, the Swami stopped, so they had nothing to do. And then he went and saw the storefront temple, and he was amongst us. And so later on, I'm going to tell some kirtan stories in England and San Francisco. So we didn't get to see the Swami at first because he was translating. But then 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 7 in the morning and 7 at night, he would come into the temple, and we had long kirtans with many instruments. There was a small person with a big kettle drum. There was Hayagriva with his kelp horns, with trumpet things on seaweed. He would make, and there was violins and guitars, and Swamiji would sit on the altar playing a bongo drum. No mridanga. And there was, the altar was him because there was no deity. Later on, I went to a store. They had Krishna in the window. And I went every day, can we have Krishna for our temple? No. But finally they said, he was out of the window. So I went into the store. He was in the back room. And they said, you can have your Krishna for $35. And we had no money. We had 1 sari and 1 dhoti in the whole movement. When Jamuna and I got married, Hayagriva said, give me my dhoti back. No, we have to have it together for 7 days. Now, give me my dhoti. So, Chaitra Guru, this is very important. Use your intuition for Krishna. I'm going to tell you how it saved my life, saved the devotees' lives in Cairo, Egypt. So many times the intuition is said, do this, say this. So I went outside the shop and said, my father's in jail, please give me some money. My best friend's in jail, he's blue. Well, actually, Shamsundar, give me some money. Oh, my child, give me some money. And Prabhupada sometimes would become like our child. He'd let me put his sweater on. And so they gave me Kartamashi, the first deity.
How was his son's first deity then? Wow.
We're going to hear how the first Harinam got. I should get back to the text, but
No, keep going. Tell us about the kirtan.
we already know this stuff, actually. Okay. So now the Swamiji got off the altar and he told us that there's such a thing as what's called a Vyasasana. And there's such a thing called Parampara, where all these sadhus and saints have carried on this from time immemorial. And so he gets off the altar, and the first night he was on the Vyasasana, we hear boom, boom on the wall. Well, next door was a thing called the Diggers, and they fed people. It was an Irish group originally, charity. And we would feed each other, people together. We were neighbors, but the Hells Angels, this motorcycle gang that was notorious for beating people up and everything, lived there, were there too. I gave them a tactic. I gave them enough tactics. And Mukunda helped them start a branch in London. I'm going to get to that. Mukunda is responsible for the Hells Angels branch in London. So we hear this banging, and so Prabhupada goes like this, Gurudas. And the first time, I'm going to tell that story too, when he went like that, I thought, oh, he's telling us to go away. But no, in India, that's how we say, come here. Come here. So, now why did he ask me? Now Tamalu's there, and Vishnu John, and Sam Rashinda. Why Gurudas? Gurudas. And I knock on the door, and this huge guy with no teeth and a swastika etched in his cheek, that doesn't look good, is there. And now I would say, well, could you party less hardy or something like that? But I just said something that Swamiji is going to talk. And could you not bang on the wall, please? He said, I'm banging on the wall, man, because of your singing. Well, there's a jazz term, knock yourself out. I didn't say that. So he said, your guru, your teacher is heavy, is deep. They respected him because he was amongst them, not cultivating rich people. They respected him. And so I said, okay, so now he's going to speak. And when we start singing again, you know, you can bang on the wall. Same thing. When we were in the Pandal in Calcutta, the communists were complaining and saying quit or die and trying to, and we had to calm them down. And we did. I'll tell that later, but the next night, the great Govinda Dasi, one of our pioneers, still going strong, her artistry and her husband, Gorsundar, did beautiful paintings, and she was one of the stalwart assistants, as well as Jamuna and Malati and Harsharani, and she would cook, and she would, in fact, there's The Last Temptation of Christ is a book by Nikos Kazantzakis, and it says that Judas was the best disciple because he did something that nobody else would do. And so when Swamiji was taking Ayurvedic medicine, she was in charge, and it was very bitter, and he used to plan his prasadam according to Ayurveda. I'm going to have this today, and he wouldn't talk. He would respect prasadam. So because Govinda Dasi was administering the Ayurvedic medicine, Swamiji said, oh, here's the starvation committee. And she took it, you know. He didn't chastise us, he would tease us. He did chastise a little bit later, but not in the beginning. So now Govinda Dasi's parents were at the temple, and now a lot of people were coming. The hippies were coming to eat breakfast after they'd trip all night. And the Indian community, the ambassador was there, Mr. Dar. And so the temple was full. And so Govinda Dasi's father was from a place called Texas. In Texas, they were more arrogant than other people because they had riches from oils and ranches for miles, farms. And then Alaska came along, and they were not the biggest state anymore, but they were still arrogant. So he goes right up to the altar, to the Vyasasan, and he says, "Why does my daughter have to have an Indian name? Why does my daughter have to have an Indian name?" Well, at this point, the Patels of Gujarat come up to hear the wisdom of the Swami. And so Govinda Dasi's father is looking like this at the Indians, thinking he was like General Custer surrounded by the Indians. What made things more comical was that there was a light bouncing off the gold tooth of the senior Patel, and it was going in Govinda Dasi's father like a strobe light. That did not help. So Swamiji sees this, and he's going like this: "You do not like Indians? You do not like..." "Yeah, I like the Indians, all right. But why does my daughter have to have an Indian name?" And I saw Swamiji disarm so many people. If she's happy, why do you object? Because parents want their children to be happy. And then Mrs. Govinda Dasi's mother took him back. But basically, this made sense. You know, it may seem strange, but she's happy. My father was overjoyed because he was afraid I was going to get killed. We had to write wills when we went down south and marched because we didn't know whether we would live. And so he was so happy with Krishna consciousness, except when they stole his shoes.
Oh, God.
See, in India, you put one shoe on one side of the temple and one shoe on the other. Because monkeys or people don't take one shoe. So yes, material life is seductive. And if we just think that our life is just made for making money, and it's just a temporary Band-Aid. We're satisfied, but then what? Then what? Then what? So the trick is to, as Swamiji said in the early days, to Krishna-ize everything. Krishna-ize everything in your life. Again, I say, what talents Krishna gives you, use those talents. That's full-hearted bhakti. Full-hearted bhakti. So we have to be careful because we're human and we are seeing things through senses. So there is sense gratification, but you can't help it. I mean, prasadam is sense gratification, but it's Krishna. But it's the same thing. It fills a hole. It's instant gratification. So in our life, Prahlad had heard this from the womb, and now what does he want to do? After he learns something, he wants to give it to his friends. And so that's what we want to do. We want to give it out in any way we can, artistic. It was so nice, Maharaj, at the yoga studio. We're very fortunate that Maharaj is here. We may take each other for granted. He might not want to hear it, but let us all praise people for who they are. And I can't say that about everyone. But he has some kindness. And so we have to be kind to one another. This is essential. The principle Das Anudas could save the world and save each other. So, okay, if there's any questions, there's a little time. If not, I'll continue talking. But does anybody have any questions? Yes.
Just have a comment. You're a very good presenter, and it's very coherent. You started off for Prahlad, you ended up with Prahlad, and you ended up on a good note, like a good message for everyone to go about kindness, right? So I thought it was brilliant what you did, how you did it, I don't know how you did it, but
I didn't know how I did it. I never planned. And besides, it's kind of Christian. It goes all over the place. But like I said, I couldn't even find the temple. I could have been. He's a hamster on the samsara wheel. You know? So thank you, Maharaj.
thank you for coming, and we really appreciate it. Anybody else? We don't have so much time, most of these devotees go to work, and we have breakfast soon. But anybody, any comments, anything you'd like to appreciate, something you like that you heard, for instance, if you have a, my question would be, can you do more and more of this for us?
Now,
No, I mean, not now, because we have to go and take breakfast, but as much as you can.
yes, that's what I'm here for. And I didn't see enough chances because it's a youth group tonight. But actually, there's a whole process of me doing it to show the early days and the Swami, and then show how suddenly he becomes Prabhupada. And I get this question all the time about how the movement has evolved. And is it good? Or what do you think? And so that's the third part, how we even evolved when Prabhupada was on the planet. So, just set it up. I could do it tomorrow morning again.
I don't know what the schedule is.
Yeah.
Well, I'm supposed to do Shema, but
Tomorrow morning, and tomorrow we have special session for
You're a specialist.
special section.
Over coffee.
6 o'clock, we have special section in Temple Park.
In the morning.
Evening.
Okay.
Not the morning, we have our class. Evening also, we have.
Okay.
It's about 6.
We'll just fill our heads with the juice. Anybody else on this?
I would like to add something like we read books on Prabhupada, like, but when we read, like, we enjoy that, but we won't get the same taste that we are getting right now listening to you. Because the expressions that you use and the way you are explaining is really like the saying Prabhupada in such a way is really very, very blissful. Like, we unfortunately didn't get a chance to see him or have an association with him. Fortunately, we all have you, and like at least to understand him, understand his mission through you. So thank you very much for coming here and sharing the nectar of Prabhupada, like, to us. And it's very important for this generation especially to take this moment to next level.
I honor you because this is Prabhupada's hat, by the way. I asked Davi Shakti, can I have a hat in the Vrindavan, in the market, and she comes back. It feels like Superman's cape or Batman's hood. Well, I see a lot of you haven't been in the ashram your whole life then. Well, thank you. But you see, you're doing it with Vani and Vopu. And I needed him to spoon-fed me because I'm not a great devotee, and you are because you're carrying it on. However, yes, the books are instructive and poetic, everything, but and I wrote a book by his example too. And in this, there's all this text and photos, is that it shows his compassion and humor side and all these things that you're enjoying. And it makes him more personal to people, and they come away saying, oh, now they even say my conception of Krishna consciousness has changed because you've given us the personal aspect of Prabhupada. And so I will continue while I'm here.
I go. I especially like the story of, the redwood door with the window and how it opened.
Yeah.
Closed, that's the way.
Yeah, but it's sort of like, don't do this at home, folks. It's not really spiritual. Here, see, the guy put text. He shouldn't have put it in the photo. There's another version where the text won't be in the photo, but what you don't see is Guru Das is not wearing shoes. And Prabhupada told me the first time was in Vrindavan, and it was hot. But I was there, Ban Bihar, and I said, I'm not going to wear shoes. This is a temple. But I did look for little bushes with shade and trees with shade. I'd go, oh, this bush, that bush is too hot. And I asked Prabhupada, what should I do? It's a temple. He said, follow in the footsteps of your spiritual master. Wear shoes. The second time, I'm in Visakhapatnam, and like I said, I put one shoe on one side and of the temple, and he goes by, and I'm running after him, and there's barnacles and shells, and he's looking, and I'm walking gingerly, and he says, wear your shoes again. And he also meant when I wear shoes, be more businesslike. It was a whole other rasa we had. And so he says, wear your shoes. You saw I was walking gingerly. I said, when I'm with you, Swamiji Prabhupada, I don't feel any pain. And he looked like, well, that's pretty stupid. Are you still a hippie? So then he gave a really nice instruction. And I'm going to leave you with this. He said, there's enough tapasya in the world that we don't have to put any more tapasya on us unnecessarily. Which means false humility, putting yourself down because you might not be doing the standard, low self-esteem. You've got to love yourself as much as loving others. You've got a great path. So don't lay any more guilt trips on you. The society will do it from childhood. Don't go here. Don't do this. Don't. Self-esteem issues are submerged. We got to get them out in groups. Talk to one another. Men's groups, women's groups, married groups. Talk to one another. Not just Hari Bol Prabhu. Although you said Hari Bol Prabhu in the right way, but it could be the same as surf's up, dude. Like a non-conversation. So instead of surf's up, dude, let's talk to one another, because there's enough tapasya in the world, and so we'll help each other to get rid of that in ourselves and others. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Now we'll have some breakfast.
So where do I go now?